Guys, welcome back. So today we're going to be working on the main bus wiring, the two sound systems, the background sound and the main voice system, and setting up the central tower and a bunch of other stuff, and then checking it all out. And then we're also going to show you the soil sampler with the door on it now and how it actually looks when it operates. So yeah, let's get started. Next piece that we're going to do is the base for two things: the central support system and the torso itself to sit on. So I've got this big aluminum disc here. This is 1/8 inch aluminum, and I've got a whole bunch of holes cut out. So obviously I have a center hole here, and then I've got a bunch of holes where the studs come up here. Now what I've done here is I've cut the holes just a little bit bigger than the nuts, so that the plate actually rests directly on the Lazy Susan. It's not raised up at all, and that then is a whole solid surface that the torso fiberglass shell can sit on. And then what happens is it'll get a fender washer and a wing nut will be on these 6 things, and that will make it removable by just reaching in the vents and then taking the wing nuts off and pulling off the torso. So pretty simple. But we've got one thing that's, you know, I wasn't really planning on because I didn't think about it, and that is the motor over here with the gear. So if I look at this with a little mirror here, so because I can't see it otherwise, I look in here and I can see that the screws that are on the top of the gear right here, get this off here. So the 2 screws that are on top of this gear right here are just barely, like almost touching that aluminum plate, which we don't want to have happen, obviously, right? And so, and the plate could flex just a tiny bit when it has some weight on it. So these are sticking up just a little bit too high. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna take the screw out, take the lock washer off of it, and just leave the regular washer, and we're going to use Loctite in there instead. And that will lower the head of this screw just enough, right, to give us enough clearance underneath there. So like I said, some of these things are really tight tolerances when you're working with things that are in close proximity to each other. And again, I wasn't really sure how I was going to do the motor, but you know, as you start building up, now you run into another issue right here. So obviously this is never going to move, and that plate is going to be running around here as the Lazy Susan moves around. So we got to make sure there's enough clearance between the top of these bolts and that plate. All right, so I pulled in the 4 threaded posts tighter inside the circle to clear that gear that's over here, and I just ran it around full 360. It's super tight. I mean, it's really close, but it does clear, so we're all set as far as that goes. And then what I did is for the remaining plates here, for one of them I traced the new holes on the plate itself. So I just, well, I had that before I put the post in there. After I drilled the holes, I marked the holes here, so I know exactly where to put them on the other plates. Now, that one plate there is 1/4 inch. It's really heavy aluminum. Probably weighs more than this big disc because this is only 1/8 here. But I'm going to be using plexiglass on the levels that I only need support for electronics and stuff. I don't need something like super heavy like the aluminum for that part. The only plate that I need that aluminum for is sort of in the middle here where the arms are, and that's going to be the main support for the arm mechanisms that are going to go in and out. So that's the only one. Everything else can be plexiglass plates. So I think we'll have the one big thicker plate and then 2 small plexiglass plates moving up the post right here. So I just have to get them all drilled out now again, then they'll be ready to go, and then we could actually start guessing sort of where stuff will be. It's going to be hard to know where the arms will be, but these are all adjustable because you just move the nuts up and down as you need to, and you can make them higher or lower as you need to. And what I'm doing is making sure that the holes that go around here are bigger than the post. Because if you try to make them exactly the same size, you're going to find that everything doesn't quite line up and you'll have to start bending the post. And you don't want to do that. You want the post to naturally just stay vertical. So you make the hole bigger so it has room to kind of move around it. So, and yeah, so that's pretty much it. So this is really good because what we'll do then is we'll get all this wiring finally permanently mounted to the plate here so we don't have to keep, you know, it gets caught every time I turn this because it's not secure yet. So, and that's pretty much it. So our next step is to get all these plates drilled out and then kind of decide where we want them. And then we can actually start mounting some electronics. So first thing we'll mount is the distribution block with the fuses, and then we'll go from there. So here's the central support tower, which basically consists of a bottom plate, which is a 1/8 aluminum, and then some threaded posts, which are just bolted to this plate, come up, and then I create different levels here to mount things. Now, in order to save weight, I changed the design a little bit, and I put 1/8 inch plexiglass for these two top ones to save weight. And here I have a 1/4 inch aluminum because this is the support base for the arm mechanisms when we get to that point. So because of that, it saves a little bit of weight here. I originally had 1/4 inch plates throughout the whole thing, but I'm trying to save as much weight every place I can, including up here on the plexiglass ones. I didn't even use the big fat lock washers. They're not needed, and every ounce, you know, saves weight. So that's the way it works. So you can see the little studs sticking up here, which the torso slides over this and then lines up with these studs and everything else. Now, the one thing I made a mistake, which luckily I caught right now because it would have been a problem farther down the road, but that right here in the center of the front of the torso, there's a sort of a box that's on the inside here called the programming bay, and that sticks out pretty far. So the original stud here was over here. They were off center, and that would have been in the way, and I wouldn't have been able to bolt that down. So you want to make sure your two studs are centered on the front here so that you don't actually interfere with the programming bay, which is going to stick in here a little bit. So luckily I caught that, but I had to re-drill all the holes in the plate and the torso to get everything lined up because I want this to be this way so that I can put the arm mechanisms here with the two posts this way. If I twisted it, then it would be much harder to mount. So anyway, that's where we are. So that is the central support tower. So it's changed a little from my original video way back when, but we got it, and now we're ready to start mounting the next step. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to mount the background sound system first, and then we're going to go from there. So let me get that going. So our next step is to get the first sound system in. There's two sound systems that are going to be inside here. One is for the background sounds, mechanical noises. One is for the actual voice. So I'll explain why we're doing two different sound systems, but right now I just wanted to get this installed. So as you can see, I've got some speakers here. These are made by a company called Drock. Really nice stuff they got. They got amps, they got speakers, they got all kinds of stuff. They got, you know, like battery meters, and they sell all kinds of stuff. So on Amazon, just type in DROK, and it's great stuff. And these are, I think, like 40 watt or something, I forget. But these are 8 ohm speakers, and just make sure whatever ohms that you get matches whatever your amp is. But what I've done here is I actually just cut this out of my concept board that I had, but this is corrugated plastic sheets. This is the kind of stuff they use for like signs, you know, for yard sales and, you know, real estate sales and stuff like that. Really, you know, it has a nice structure to it, so it doesn't bend, but it is soft sort of, and it gives a cushion to the speaker. So it has some support to it, but at the same time it'll like, you know, sort of give a baffle to the, you know, speakers so they don't vibrate inside. And all I did was I cut a square around where the speaker was, and I'm going to use 2 L brackets that I can mount on the back here on each side, and then that will mount to the robot. And so again, what I'm doing here for this background sounds is that sound is going to come out of the side vents. So I'm going to mount these about right here on each side. Now I could easily put them right against the post here and just wire tie them, and that would actually work fine. But I want them closer to the outside here, to the vent itself. So, plus on the inside here, we've got these wires coming up that are going to be spinning around. So I don't want to get too close to these, and I still have to mount these somewhere. So I'm going to get to a bunch of L brackets and just mount these like that on each side. Then once these are mounted, all I need to do is get the other piece, which is the amp and the player itself mounted, which we'll show you as soon as I get these finished. So let me get these speakers mounted and we'll come back. So now we have the first half of the sound system and I've mounted it basically. So what I did here on the speakers is I'm using this corrugated sign material, which is nice and it's stiff, but it has some you know, absorption properties where it won't rattle, and because it's not a really hard surface, but it's flexible and it's strong. And all I did was I put some L brackets right here and just ran some bolts through there, right? And then the bolts that come up from the bottom are flatheads, remember, because we got that gear there, so we got to make sure that clears. And so I have a left and a right speaker, as you can see here, and those will point out towards the vents on the left and the right side. Then what I have is this little unit right here, which is this amplifier combination player. So what this little unit is an easy way to hook up some speakers and play something off a card or USB. Or you could actually, there's some inputs on the back too, if you had an MP3 player, okay? You know, whatever you want to do, and you can actually play through this. This actually has a radio in it too, believe it or not, an FM radio, but, so I just have an SD card here. So what I've done is I've taken the background mechanical sounds off a soundtrack. I ran it through an audio processor to clean it up and do a couple things with it. And I just put that one clip on this this big SD card. It's a full-size SD card right here. It was just an extra SD card I had that, you know, doesn't have a lot of space on it. So I use that. And then it has a mode button here where you can just repeat the same track over and over. The reason I'm using this, though, the main big reason is because it automatically starts and it remembers whatever you left it at. So I left it at repeating mode, and there's only one clip on here, and because the SD card's in there, as soon as it gets power, which is going to be the, you know, really when I plug the power pack into the side of the robot, a couple seconds this will start up, and then the mechanical sounds will start up, and, you know, all the lights and everything will come on and everything like that. So it'll actually look and sound like you just powered him up by putting his power pack in the side. And this is different than like an MP3 player like I'm using for the voice and everything else, where you actually have to trigger those. Those have to actually be triggered. They don't start up automatically. And I investigated out on how many little trigger boards, and they all did the same thing, which is they need an input in order for it to trigger. Now, I could write an Arduino sketch so that when the Arduino boots up, right, it automatically starts something and triggers it and does the same thing. But this was easy. This was $23, I think, 5 years ago or something, whenever I bought it, I forget. They don't make this exact one anymore, but they make one similar, very similar to it, just another brand name, but basically does the exact same thing, same buttons and controls and everything that you can still buy, and it's like 25 bucks. And for 25 bucks, it's ready to go. And all you do is you connect the outputs on the back, which are just spring-loaded, to the terminals on the speakers, plus and minus. You put your SD card in here. You can adjust your volume, your bass, and your treble on here if you want to. I just have the volume all the way up, and then you can set, it even has a little equalizer on it, but then I set it to repeat this track right here with the repeat button. And you'll see when I power it up, it just automatically starts up, and that's pretty much how it's going to work. And that's just for the background sounds. So I don't need to control it with anything. I want those sounds to come on automatically as soon as I plug the power pack in. And that's pretty much it. So let me get the the cord to plug it in, you'll see what it sounds like. Now, even though it has a AC adapter on it, this output here is 12 volts DC. That's another reason I bought this unit, because it's a 12 volt unit. So I'm gonna obviously cut this off right here, and then this lead will be going to my distribution block to get power when the robot's powered on. But let's just pretend I'm plugging in the power pack right here, okay? So what'll happen is after like a couple seconds, the background mechanicals will start coming on, okay? Pretty cool. And you can see, like, even on the display right here, I don't know if you can see it, but basically I think it's a 30-second track I made, and then it'll just repeat over and over as soon as it gets to 30. I think it's 30. Yep, there it goes. And then it just starts over again. And that's it. It keeps looping, and you can't even tell that it's actually looping. It just starts right up. Okay? And you can adjust the treble and the bass on it if you want to make it however you want to make it, but it's very simple and it works for what I need. And that is the sound system for the background sounds. So now that we've got our background sound system going, what is the next step? So we want to start with the main distribution power block and get that all set up. So basically what I want to get I want to get all this wiring out of the bottom here that's just hanging down below this plate right now, and get it permanently mounted here in its final position so that I can basically leave this mounting tower here, and I don't have to keep taking it on and off. So what we want to do is get a distribution block, and this block will contain the leads that go to the main power, and it'll also contain, as you can see right here, a bunch of fuse spots. So this will have 6 circuits that we can go off of, and that should be plenty for what we need. There'll be like a circuit for the arms, head, the chest, the neon, I forget what the other ones are, but anyway, the other sound system, right? So there's a bunch of stuff that we're gonna have like for 6 circuits. So what we're gonna do here is mount this, and then everything comes off of this block. So this is obviously gonna get the full 12 volt up to 60 amp feed coming down from the batteries, right? Up from the batteries. So we got to mount this somewhere. Now, we can't mount it in the front here because I told you about that little bay that's sort of right here. And I don't want to mount it on the second level here because the arm mechanisms and everything I don't know how that's all going to play out yet. And I may need this space for mounting different things in the middle. So I can either put it here or on the top one. And it makes more sense to put it on the top one because I can take the head off the robot and then replace a fuse if I needed to, or whatever's going on, and not have to disassemble stuff to get down to this level. Because the only way, once this is all assembled, right, is to take the torso off again to get down to these levels. On the top here, way at the top here, on the topmost level, when you take the head off the robot, which is, the head is right over there, remember that, that I've already built in the previous episodes, right? You can pop that off the top of the robot and then actually have access to this top plate. So anything on the top plate is immediately accessible. So we're going to put it up here instead. So we're going to run our main wires that are coming off the bottom there for the feed right up the center. And we got to cut some holes in these plates, but we're going to run it right up the center here and then feed that main feed up there. And then we can permanently mount any kind of power feeds that we need. So one of them is for that little player that I just showed you, that amp player. I need to do the 12 volt feed for that so that when he powers on, it's automatic. So that's what we're going to do. So the next step is to get this up here and get our feeds all running up to the top there, get everything wire tied and secured. Now what we're going to do down here is we're going to make quick disconnects again, because if we ever need to get this apart, we want to be able to take this whole unit off and disconnect from these 6 feed wires that are coming up from the bottom. Okay, and so we have to have disconnects for that so that we can, you know, do that and not then have to cut wires or do different things if we ever need to get it apart. All right, so I've got the main voice sound system here. So you can see there's 2 speakers right here, which is about where the neon voice plate is, right? That's going to be speaking when it flashes in synchronization with the dialogue. So I've got 2 mounted here, and I've got the wires coming out here. Now I just have the little amp here where the MP3 player feeds the audio into, just sitting here right now, because this is actually going to get mounted right here. In this hole right here, there's a dial that goes on here, a little turn dial that's part of the robot, and I'm going to actually, and in the series it was just a dummy, you know, dial, didn't do anything, but we're going to actually make it active, and we're going to use that as the volume control to turn up and down for sound. So this is actually going to be identical to the original, but functional at the same time. So because that comes later, this has to be finished first. Right now I just have it sitting on this main plate here, which is going to be the plate for the arm supports eventually. So, but I did get the, I've got the receiver here for the Xbox, and then I've got the speakers mounted in on the top here. Then I've got my Arduino board, I've got my USB shield, I've got the trigger board for the MP3 sounds. There's my distribution block. I've got 2 circuits here, you know, with fuses in them right now. And some of the wiring is like, you know, tied neatly. Another wiring right now is just sitting here because it's just, I'm not ready for that quite yet. Down here, we've got our player for the background sounds and speakers down here. All this is ready to go. As you can see, it goes down to the center here, and this is where my slip joint is. So we're going to test this out in a second to see, but everything at this point should be functional as far as treads are functional, the waist is functional, the background sounds are functional, and then the main voice sounds are functional. And yeah, we're going to test it out, see how everything's looking so far. And then we'll talk about our next step after that. So let me put this on the tripod and we'll see if it works. So let's test a couple things out. So let me turn it on here real quick. First thing, background sound should come on, which they did. Alright, now on my Xbox, if I power this up.
Main computer boot sequence completed.
Alright, we got that. And now, if we go down to here, we forgot to show you this last time. When we zoom in on the soil sampler door, because now that we have the door in place, let me trigger that and show you. Now I don't have this set up yet, so I gotta go connect 2 wires, but that's what it looks like. And that's what it looks like with the door. So pretty cool. That works really well. So we're good there. Alright, and then let's look at the... let's see, I'm going to zoom in a little here, hopefully so you can see it, but... we're going to try the waist. So on my Xbox here, it's going to be this joystick. Alright, so you can see I can go back and forth, but watch the, if you look, I'm going to be able to go 360 degrees. I don't have to have a stop one way or the other because we have that slip ring down below, right? So the entire thing can twist around 360 degrees. Super cool. Now, I wish it did go a little faster. The only problem is that I really can't go any faster because it's a 24-volt motor and I'm running 12-volt main bus, right? So that's one of the issues if you use a heavy-duty 12-volt motor, 24-volt motor. is that it cuts the speed, right, in half, right? It'd be nicer if it was a little bit faster, but it's okay. It's not bad, and I'm good with it because he's just going to be talking and kind of moving back and forth, so that's fine. The only way to fix that would either put a different motor in. And the problem is most of the motors that are faster are weaker, and there's just a lot of weight on the top here that it has to handle, and I don't want it to burn out, so that's why I use the heavy duty 24 volt motor there. The other thing is that I'd have to basically do some kind of thing where I did a 24 volt battery just for that motor, so it's good enough. And what's really nice is I can go 360 around, so that's really cool. All right, so that all works. And then of course you've seen it before, but obviously on the other joystick here,
I am completely mobile.
right, we can actually move. So cool. So everything works up to this point. So really happy with everything so far. And all we got to do is, I'm not sure what the next step is, to be honest with you. I got to think about it because we do have to get the torso, like body work done, and that's a big job. So yeah, let me actually shut this off here real quick. Now right now I'm just using a switch on the lower tread section, but of course this will all be controlled by the power pack once we get that at that point. So the main on and off switch will actually be plugging in the power pack and pulling out the power pack. And that switch on the tread is just a secondary switch, to actually supply power to the entire body. So, but for right now, I switched that on and off to, to get it to function. So, yeah, so we've got, that's the base system, right? And then we've got another control system, Easy Robot, or Synthium as they're called now, which can also control a lot of things once we get to that point. Don't forget there's a whole bunch of chest buttons that you can push to do things. So there's a ton of stuff going to go on in this torso. We're just getting started, honestly. But at this point, I think because we're now starting we're at the beginning of July right now, we've only got about 2 good months of really good painting weather left before it starts getting, sort of iffy and, possibly rainy and everything else. And so we've got to try, if we can, to try to get the torso finished, which is a lot of work. So let me go over here, which you can see I've got a lot of body work still left on it. Most of it on the back, and on this side everything's all finished. This side you can see I've got a lot of work down here left. And this is all, when I say body work, I'm talking about, Bondo, sanding and shaping and everything else, right? There's just a ton of work there to get this finished. And then, of course, then it has to be textured, and get those coats of paint that, I showed you before for the rest of it. So it's a big job just to get this done. I think our next step is on the next video, we're going to show you the placement of the torso hooks, which go up here. And on this side right here, we will get the terminals mounted for the power pack. Okay. And then there's a hole here that has to be drilled where the section is for the microphone. So we want to get all that drilled and basically all the drilling finished on it so that we can just concentrate on the body work and the paint at that point. So that may take me, honestly, a good part of the rest of the summer just to get all this body work done on this torso, which is, once that's done, that's a big deal. And it's, huge amount of progress on the project at that point. So I'm trying to think what else. We do have some other things that we need to start looking at off the robot. As far as the arm mechanism, the wrists, and the claws, that's a whole big project just on those themselves. And then we've got, there's lights. There's two big lights here that blink back and forth. There's the chest buttons. There's like, I forget what it is, 10, I think, chest buttons here. And then you got all the belly lights here. We've got we could actually start building the programming bay because there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes in there. And that's another piece that all has to be painted and everything. So ton of work. We're not anywhere near close to finish yet, but I think we've made pretty good progress. So anyway, so that is how it's kind of going to work with the main support tower. Now, of course, I can move these shelves just by loosening those big nuts, and then I can move the plates up and down as needed. So I kind of left gaps and spaces above the components to make sure that I'd be able to move it up and down at least some if I needed it. Same thing with the wiring. I've left a lot of extra so that it will be flexible enough to be able to, if I need to move these up or down and stuff like that. But once we get our final positions, then we will, wire tie everything snug and make sure things aren't moving and rubbing and everything. And that's gonna, clean everything up on the inside. The goal obviously is that if I ever need to get it apart, that this whole section right here would just be sort of autonomous by itself. In other words, it's the only thing that's going to be tied to the torso itself will be the wiring that has to go to the front panel there with all its controls, and those would have quick disconnects. So what would happen is all those lighting and panels and everything on the front there would have long wires that run all the way up here to the top, all the way up here, and then there'd be a quick disconnect at the top. And the reason is because I want to be able to take the head off, disconnect the quick disconnects, right? And then be able to lift the whole torso off if I needed to get in here to fix something or do something. And that's kind of the key to the whole thing. So, but yeah, so that's kind of where we are. Just to close this out, I put the torso on, I laid it on just so you could see kind of like how it moves and everything, right? But if you guys are Lost in Space fans, let's see if you remember what episode this was from. Hope you remembered that one. That was a cool episode of that particular song was in. So, yeah, so that's going to wrap it up for today, I think. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that video on some of the sound systems and the basic main bus wiring and that little dance by the robot at the end there. So as always, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, put your comments down below about this video, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace guys.